member orientation. My name is Francesca Webb, and I am the clerk of the board here at SANDAG. And I'll be your MC this morning, along with my co-host, Robin Wapner, who is our manager of government relations here. You'll also get to know her a little bit if you're working with the executive committee. She's our committee liaison for that policy advisory committee also. Thank you again for joining us. I'm like many of you, I am somewhat new to this role of being clerk of the board. And I know a lot of you are experiencing what I am. Starting a new role in the middle of a pandemic is a little bit of a different situation. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot here with you this morning. And also looking forward to getting back into the boardroom and getting to know you a little better in person once we're all able to do that safely. So this morning, we're going to be discussing the roles and responsibilities of the board with our presenter, Julie Wiley. Like I said, I'm new to this role, but I've been at SANDAG for about 9 years now. And when I first started, I was in the communications department. And one of the things I remember about starting in that role was the enormous list of acronyms that are involved with being part of this agency, and kind of all of the different terms and different responsibilities of the agency, that there are a lot to learn. But luckily, you don't have to have an enormous binder of information, because Julie is going to explain to you all of the different roles and responsibilities that you are now a part of. So before we hand it off to Julie, I do want to introduce Hasanah, our executive director. I'm sure all of you know him. He always calls himself our cheerleader to the staff, and he definitely embodies that role really well. And so I'll hand it off to him to introduce himself and get us started. Hasan?
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you very much. And yeah, you're new, but you're doing an amazing job as a clerk of the board. So I appreciate you, and I'm sure the board members do too. Thank you, and good morning to all of you board members, and welcome to the orientation. Today is, you can stop Julie and ask her a question anytime, but I just want you to know a little bit about Julie. If I want anybody on my team, when I get into trouble, I want Julie Wiley. Julie has an amazing knowledge of the agency, has a historic, actually we just celebrated here 20 years at SANDAG. I don't know anybody who knows SANDAG and the business that SANDAG does, and the relationship that the board, the roles that the board play, than Julie. So, I'm sure you will be in good hands with her. But this is an opportunity for all of us to learn about things that are important. My job and my team's job is to help you lead. You're the leaders, you're the policy makers, you make decisions, and we implement your policies. And so I'm really honored to have Julie talk about this subject, because she's very knowledgeable. So with that, I'll turn it to the amazing Julie Wiley.
So good morning, everyone. I'm sure you are wondering perhaps why I am the person that's been selected. Yes, I've been here a long time, but I am as surprised as you to be back in the seat of teaching orientation to board members, something that I did 15 years ago when I was in the Office of General Counsel, and I'm going to try and do for you again today. So if you do have questions, Robin and Francesca are going to be watching out for hands being raised. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and pull up my PowerPoint for you, and then we can get this ball rolling. So first, let me tell you a little bit more about me. I know Hasan talked to you about how he thought I was the best person for this job, but I think it's really important to tell you a little bit about why I'm so excited to work at SANDAG. So for those of you who don't know, we have 40 board policies at SANDAG. So if you haven't checked out the legal page on the SANDAG website. Go take a look. There are 40 board policies there for you to get familiar with. And I actually, over my years at SANDAG, I've written 35 of those 40 board policies, at least the first drafts of them. And they have been modified a little over the years, but I've gotten to work on a lot of the governance documentation for the agency. So that's been really rewarding for me. Another thing that's been really rewarding for me is all the bills we've successfully passed for the agency. So I helped with writing SB 1703, which I'll talk to you more about back in 2001 and 2002. But there's been 12 other bills that I've written for this agency that have become law. And I am really proud of that. And I think each time I do it, I'm helping this region get better. Also helped with bringing ARGIS under our wing, the Automated Regional Justice Information System, back in 2004, 2005 time range. Helped work on bringing ARGIS to SANDAG and wrote their Joint Powers Authority language for their agreement. And why that's important is, and you should know about it, is because ARGIS is an independent joint powers authority, but SANDAG is the administrator of that JPA. And so that is a really unique aspect of SANDAG and how the Public Safety Committee at SANDAG came to be. So want to make sure to bring notoriety to that a little bit. I wrote the procurement manual for the agency, the first procurement manual. Hopefully you all know, when you are working with a public agency, we have to do our procurements in a competitive fashion. And so there's lots of rules that we have to follow for that. And I believe that starting off by writing that procurement manual is what has led me to where I am now, which is not in the Office of General Counsel anymore. After serving as your Deputy General Counsel, your General Counsel, your Special Counsel for 17 years, now I am your Director and Legal Counsel for Contracts and Grants. I also wrote the agency's first social equity handbook 10 years ago, and I am thrilled that we are now going down the path of having an equity statement and getting a plan in place to bring more equity to this region and the things that SANDAG does. And I'd like to feel like I'm part of that legacy because I wrote our first handbook on that topic. I've also had a hand in writing big chunks of the human resource policies for the agency, including over 20 of our administrative policies. And I oversaw the legal aspects of the purchase of SR 125, that franchise that SANDAG purchased from the private sector. So as you can see, I've been intertwined with SANDAG's history for a long time. And why am I telling you all this? I'm not telling you to brag. I'm telling you because I want you to know that after 20 years, I am still really excited about working for SANDAG. And I'm not the only one that has been here this long. There are actually 21 other people besides me on your staff at SANDAG who've been here for more than 20 years. And I've put tens of thousands of hours into this agency. I am all in here. I am passionate about this agency and what it's accomplished and what we can do in the future if we partner together. So I'm hoping that as I go through this PowerPoint this morning, you guys will get excited too. So I noticed that Gary Bonelli is actually here today, getting oriented to SANDAG, which I find sort of amusing. Little did he know that he was going to be featured in my PowerPoint this morning. So Gary, I want you to know I am excited about opening the board retreat. It has given me a chance to reminisce a little bit about why I've stayed so long at the agency. Before I came to SANDAG, I was a private sector litigator for law firms, and I moved around every few years, and I just always thought I'd end up as a partner in one of those law firms for my career. But guess what? I came to SANDAG, And I found the best partners ever here at Sandag. And these are two of my longest term partners you're seeing up on the screen. Gary Benelli was the director of communications when I came to Sandag, and Judy Ritter is still on the board, and she was on the board when I first started with Sandag. I went through and looked, and some of you have been here a long time. Matt Hall, I saw you are here this morning as well. It's great to have you back on the board. But Judy's the one that's been around as long as me and longer than me, so I thought I would highlight her. Let me tell you that Sandag staff considers all the board members its partners, though, because everything we do relies on coordination with the cities and the county. So I am going with a hat theme for my PowerPoint this morning, and I'm doing that because, as the agenda item told you, you're going to learn about the many hats that Sandag wears. Hopefully as you listen, you'll recognize three themes that I'm going to weave in here that I hope will get you excited as well. So one is our rich history. The next one is we are unique. And the last one is probably the most important, and it's that we can make great things happen for the region when we work together. So let's start with having a rich history. I will bet that most of you ran for office to make a difference in your communities, and that you came to Sandag hopefully to make a difference for the region. There have been a lot of people who have worked for Sandag or served on the board that might surprise you over the history of the agency. They all, I assume, wanted to make a difference too. So I thought I'd just mention a few of them. Did you know that Mayor Pete Wilson and County Supervisor Dick Brown led the charge to have the agency leave the auspices of the County of San Diego and form the JPA that eventually became Sandag in 1972. So back in 1972, those two were working to try and have what would become Sandag split off from the county. Back then, Sandag was relying on county employees. We weren't called Sandag, though. We were called CPO, so I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But first, let me mention a couple other people that are in our history. Did you know perhaps that Senator Larry Sterling was a former director of finance in Sandag, and that Roger Hedchuck was actually Sandag's first legal counsel? So as you could probably tell from me mentioning some of these names, we've had ups and downs. The agency's been around for more than 50 years. But time and again, it's the agencies and staff that have led us to bring great things to this region. So I'm going to talk about some of our historic big wins because they help explain why I've stayed with the agency for 20 years and why I love to work at Sandag and be part of those big wins. There are a lot of big wins, but I'm going to focus on three of them that I will talk about. One I'm going to talk about is the SB 1703, the consolidation of Sandag with responsibilities that had formerly been held by MTS and NCTD. Another one is the Transnet extension in 2004. And the last one I'll talk about is the purchase of the SR 125 franchise. And all of those wins have something in common. And I've put those on the slide for you. Every time Sandag is successful, it's because we've got collaboration between the board members. And that consensus is what allows us to move forward every single time. Also trust, not just trust between the board members, but also trust between the board and staff. And then the fact that we all have the same goal, and that's the best interest of the region, and that being the primary goal of every decision that is made. And so that is something else I want to talk about more this morning. So I told you one of the other things I was going to talk to you about after history is how unique we are. And I want to tell you, for those of you who aren't familiar with SANDAG yet, you have hit the jackpot when it comes to working with a regional agency with diverse responsibilities. So I'm going to talk to you about some of those. I think they will help you understand more about SANDAG. So first thing to tell you is that SANDAG is an MPO, a Metropolitan Planning Agency. And MPOs are a designation by the federal government, and they were something that were a brainchild of the federal government back in the 1960s. Originally, the MPOs were supposed to align with air basins for air quality purposes. But each MPO was selected based on the agencies that came forward and said, hey, we're the right ones to be the MPO for this region. And the governor of each state had to sort of bless that responsibility being laid on the shoulders of the agency. So you can see throughout the state, we've got MPOs and also another type of agency called Regional Transportation Planning Agencies. Now, SANDAG is both of those. And so we have both the MPO designation and the RTPA designation at SANDAG. I've put some of the nuanced differences between those names on your screen here. Another one that you'll hear used a lot throughout the state is Council of Governments. And so councils of governments are usually joint powers authorities versus something that an agency that's formed by statute. One of the sort of hallmarks of a council of government is that they're set up to be more flexible and not focused just on transportation or air quality issues. So SANDAG, since it's a hybrid that includes all of those, we have not just statutory designations and statutes that that govern the way SANDAG runs and is set up, but we also have a history of having a joint powers agreement where all the agencies had to agree to come together and work together on regional planning issues. So we still have bylaws at this agency, which is there for the most part. If you look at those bylaws, there's a lot of similarities between those bylaws and what's actually in SANDAG statutes regarding SANDAG's governance. But if you're wondering, why do we have both? It's because of this hybrid situation and the fact that we are, have multiple hats that we wear. So we are unique, though. You look at this slide and you go, oh, well, what's so unique? Yes, we wear some different hats, but look, there's MPOs and RTPAs all across the state. Well, I want to tell you that there are some very unique aspects to what SANDAG has accomplished in this region. So one of the things that makes us unique is having 17 tribal nations in our region. That is definitely not something that the other MPOs, RTPAs, and COGs have as part of their makeup. They don't go along an international border like we do. And so SCAG and SANDAG are the only MPOs that in the state that have an international border. We also have a very strong military presence in the region. And that's why the SANDAG board has representatives not just from the county and all the cities, but from the tribal nations and Mexico and the military, because they all have a voice when it comes to the decisions for this region.
Julie, it looks like we have a hand raised from Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Just because we're on this topic, and you brought up the military presence. The city of Oceanside, we border Camp Pendleton, and in my district alone, District 2, we have over 17,000 trips per day just from incoming and outgoing, military personnel. And so from a demographic and impacts perspective, how does SANDAG work with the base, and how come the base was never a part of the voting rights? Like, for example, the San Diego Water Authority, which, involves a federal installation in their voting powers and decision-making. How come that was never established when, as a part of SANDAG? Because there is great impacts and influence by the base's population.
Yes, so there might be others who want to chime in, but I will tell you that the genesis of the SANDAG board's voting structure right now comes directly from the voting structure that was in place as part of SANDAG's history of being a joint powers agency. So the various jurisdictions that formed the joint powers agency in the 1970s are the ones where the voting power was given to them, and that has ended up being codified into our statutes. But we definitely want to hear the voice of the military. We recognize that the military has many aspects of how it does its business from day to day, everything from the trips it takes and jobs access to, the impacts to the economy. And so that is why they have a seat at the SANDAG board. I know we also have a military working group though, and I don't know if one of the other staff members that are here listening wants to chime in about the military working group and tell you a little bit about what it does.
Yeah, I think my question is more in relation to, when those voting decisions, however the language is written, was Camp Pendleton included in that conversation? And if not, why? And then also, how can we get them as a part of that conversation to become a part of the voting block? Because you can add and take away in a joint powers, different jurisdictions. What does that look like? And, if we can chime in a little bit on that in particular.
So, okay, so let me back up and say, so we were a joint powers agency, and that's our history. But since Senate Bill 1703 became law in January 2003, SANDAG's voting structure has been in statute. So in order to change the voting structure at SANDAG, it requires legislation. And so that is something that the board could visit, obviously, but for now, what's worked really well is having their voice at the table. And I know Gary Benelli is listening. I mean, I think he can attest to how well that has worked, despite them not having actual votes.
Well, I agree. We don't have to spend too much time on this. I would respectfully disagree. I think that North County's been heavily neglected by SANDAG decision-making because of the voting structure and the power so centralized in the San Diego Chula Vista area. So that's kind of the basis of my question. And so, they may have a seat at the table, but that hasn't influenced, infrastructure that we need up here.
Okay, well, I know staff's listening. I see Matt Hall has his hand raised. Matt, I'm not sure if you're going to comment on the same thing, but do you want to ask a question or make a comment?
I would just say to Mr. Rodriguez, there's been a lot of conversation about Pendleton being part of the SANDAG board, but if you're going to make Pendleton, and the conversation went something like this, is that if you're going to make Camp Pendleton, give them a seat at the board, who else in the region would deserve a seat at the board? So I can remember there being a real in-depth discussion about this, and the fact that the military has a presence on the board, we felt at that time that was sufficient. But I can tell you, Mr. Rodriguez, we spent a lot of time on this conversation, and others who felt that they needed a seat on the board.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'll spend my own off orientation time digging into that more. Thank you guys for your comments.
Sure. So I want to get into Sandag's other names, because this is an area that can be very confusing, especially for new board members. So you've heard me talk about a couple of these. Metropolitan Planning Organization, so MPO, that's a designation that Sandag has based on federal law. Comprehensive Planning Organization, remember when I was talking about Sandag being under the umbrella of the county and using county staff many years ago, back in the 60s and 70s, that was the name that Sandag had prior to Sandag, Comprehensive Planning Organization, CPO. Consolidated Agency is another name that you hear Sandag referred to, and that stems from SB 1703. Originally, when Senate Bill 1703 was being written, and Senator Peace was pushing for that, there was originally talk about the agency not just being consolidated with MTS and NCTD functions, but with functions of other agencies in the region. Due to politics and various very in-depth conversations about what would work for the region, what ended up happening is the consolidation only ended up involving MTS and NCTD, but since the drafting of the legislation happened over a 2-year legislative session, when it was originally written, we used the term consolidated agency because we didn't know how many other agencies were going to be consolidated into Sandag. And so that means the legislation still to this day uses the term consolidated agency. So don't get confused when you see that. That's just another name for Sandag. We also have the name San Diego County Regional Transportation Commission, and the Sandag Board also serves as the San Diego County Regional Transportation Commission. This name stems from our sales tax authority, and so that's Transnet. And so whenever the board is acting on something that involves Transnet and its authorities based on the sales tax ordinance, then it is acting and wearing the hat of the San Diego County Regional Transportation Commission. I also mentioned the Regional Transportation Planning Agency moniker. That is another one that we wear, and that one has to do with our regional transportation planning role. We're also the Congestion Management Agency under federal law for this region. Another thing you'll hear Sandag referred to sometimes is as a self-help agency. And that again stems from our taxation authority. And so counties in San Diego, or excuse me, in California, who have the ability to impose a tax, statutory authority to impose a tax by putting it on the ballot, are known as self-help because we help bring money, local money, into our region to help leverage it and obtain money from state and federal sources. And then another one that I'm going to mention here is SourcePoint, also known as Service Bureau. Sandag actually has a nonprofit public benefit corporation. It's been around for decades, and it is actually the board of SourcePoint and Service Bureau is the executive committee at Sandag. So sometimes the executive committee acts wearing a hat as the board of directors for SourcePoint. I'm going to stop there and see if anybody has any questions about any of those names. Well, let me ask you this because, oh, Jack, go ahead.
Thank you, Julia. I'm wondering if it would be helpful to provide some background, or I have to need the background on the actual formation of regional transportation agencies, COGS. You mentioned the federal agency may have originally started with MPOs, but as we have all these titles and responsibilities, how is Sandag governed? Who formed Sandag? Who gave us the power to govern, and some overlying strategies that were taken when these COGs and regional transport agencies were actually formed? What was the logic in that?
Well, okay, so the logic originally for MPOs, as I mentioned, was air basins and Clean Air Act issues. And as SANDAG was in its form as CPO, the Comprehensive Planning Organization, it was under the umbrella, as I said, of the county. It was county employees that were doing all the work. And so SANDAG was not a separate entity at that point. As I understand it, although I was not around back in the 60s and 70s, what I understand is that there was a desire to have independent staff that was working on regional transportation planning, and other regional issues. And so there was a push to form a joint powers agency. So joint powers agencies are, the mechanism for setting those up is in California statute. And there's lots of JPAs around, fire departments form JPAs, school districts, lots of entities form these joint powers. So originally, the idea for SANDAG breaking off as the CPO and forming a joint powers agency was to allow for an independence of the staff in making recommendations for the planning responsibilities it had at that time. So that's the history of how we ended up forming the JPA originally. Does that answer your question, Jack?
I would just add that, prior to COGS and Council of Governments, there wasn't the kind of cooperation for regional planning. So maybe in the 50s, Caltrans may have been doing planning for the whole state, but as regions needed special cooperation within that region, COGS started to form, and then regional governments came up with essentially the strategy that they would work to meet regional needs, and that the state would, of course, state and federal government was providing lots of money, but they required these regional agencies to get together and work out their issues and develop good regional plans. And that was the logic or strategy of why we have regional planning agencies, as well as Caltrans.
So originally, when SANDAG had regional planning responsibilities, it was due to needing to develop an RTP, a regional transportation plan, which is a federal law requirement. It wasn't until much later that the state of California came up with other aspects that it wanted included as part of the RTP. So I'm going to stop though, because I see Hassan wants to speak. So
I think just to add to Julie's and confirm what Council Member Shu said. So the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, was created just to do what you outlined, Council Member Shu, and it is created, Julie, if I understand it right, by a United States Congress statute in the 1960s. So that's why it's really hard, unless you change the statute that Congress did back then, it's hard to change the MPO and how it's required. But also the creation of MPO does not, we can be an MPO without membership even for the area. The JPA and what Julie was trying to say is we evolve into RTPA, regional transportation agencies, we evolve into Council of Government simply because the governance structure is not spelled out in the MPO creation. But you're right, we were created for a very specific purpose in the 1960s by a congressional statute, and that haven't changed since.
So I'm wondering, this confusing set of names, they obviously regional planning is sort of the main area of responsibility that SANDAG has had over the years, at least until we consolidated and took on construction and programming responsibilities as part of SB 1703. What do you guys think about the fact that we've got all these designations that have come from federal and state and local agreement? You know, I personally think the reason we keep getting these is because we just keep doing a great job, and because the board and the staff are working together and building consensus and doing what's best for the region. Matt, did you have a comment on that?
No, I do not.
Oh, your hand is still raised. Sorry, Matt. So how about some of the rest of you? Do you think that the public cares that we have all these different names? Do you think everybody should know, or do you think it should be seamless? Do you think all anybody really needs to know is that SANDAG's the regional planning agency? What do you guys think about that? Matt, are you raising your hand again?
No. It says, oh, lower hand.
There you go.
So let me, with Julie asking the question, just also bring a couple of points. You know, we actually had recent bills by Senator Keo that give us the ability as an agency to do watershed planning, and the list goes on. Recently, this year, we became the agency that does the census, even so the county and the city could do it. And so to Julie's point, yes, we would like to think we're really that special and that good, we could do all these things, but also we're the only agency actually that have the reach that we do, and that is 18 cities and the counties. I don't know of any other organization that have that, and that by itself gives it you know, a reason why I think it's suitable for it to do the work that we do. But one other thing, and I think we're going to be talking to you in the coming weeks and months, is we're going to look seriously about should we be involved in water planning and infrastructure for water, and I think there's bills that give us that authority. Should we be involved in more things that deals with the urban form? And I think we as an agency are equipped to deal with it. It's the leadership that's going to decide whether that's suitable for us or not.
Well, so let's keep moving here, because I actually have even more hats that we wear here that I want to touch on. You know, regional transportation planning, that's the one that you're likely to hear about SANDAG having most of the time. And we're going to talk a lot more about SANDAG's regional transportation planning efforts during the retreat. Other responsibilities that we have is we run toll roads. And so originally it was the Coronado Bridge, and we don't do that one anymore, but we got authority for the I-15 express lanes. We've got SR 125 now due to our purchase of that franchise. And there's going to be more probably, and I'm sure all of you board members will talk more about that going into the future. Did you know we do criminal justice research and that we're the clearinghouse for that? And actually, that's one of our oldest areas of responsibility, doing criminal justice research for the agency. And as Hassan mentioned, we do the census. We did it this last time, but actually we've been working on being the clearinghouse and the designated census agency for this region for decades. So that is part of SANDAG's long history. I already talked about the Transnet responsibilities we have. We're also the administrator of the Freeway Service Patrol. So when you see the trucks, the tow trucks, and other types of trucks on the freeways during commute times, SANDAG is the one that contracts with those services and works with Caltrans to administer the Freeway Service Patrol. Several years back now, we took over the Service Authority for Freeway Emergencies, known as SAFE. And so we're the ones that now take care of the call boxes along the side of the freeways. We've been doing the RENA allocation, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, Assessment Allocation, sorry. It's one of those acronyms, for many years now, pursuant to state law. As part of SP 1703, We took over building infrastructure for the region for public transportation. We're a grantor agency, so we use Transnet funds, FTA funds, other funds we get, and we try and allocate those grant funds to the member agencies and to nonprofits in the region to carry out projects. We also oversee the regional fair ordinance and setting the fares so that there's consistency between what MTS and NCTD charge in the way of fares, and it's seamless for the users of the systems. We have responsibility via statute to develop Otay Mesa East and a new port of entry east of where the current Otay Mesa border crossing is. We have statutory authority to redevelop the Old Town campus where Navarre is. And you're going to hear a lot about that as well. And then transportation demand management. We also are the agency that works on transportation demand management. So we run the van pool and the carpool programs, guaranteed ride home, all kinds of programs that SANDAG is responsible for. So as you can imagine, we have lots of different types of funding that go with all these responsibilities, and there never seems to be enough of it, unfortunately, to do everything that we want. But I know you're going to hear more during the retreat about all of our different types of funding and the committees that we have to try and get input from the public and address all of these responsibilities. So you're going to hear more about our policy advisory committees and lots of other topics related to these hats during the remainder of the retreat. So one of those three big wins that I told you about that I wanted to discuss with you was Senate Bill 1703. And remember, I told you there were three key factors that I think are in common for these big wins I'm going to talk about. And those were collaboration, trust, and the primary goal of doing what's best for the region and wearing that regional hat when it comes to regional decisions. So SB 1703 was something I worked on and spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on in 2001 and 2002. And during that time, there were hundreds of hours of meetings between the staff at MTS, NCTD, SANDAG, all the board members, and we collaborated on how to make this consolidation work. And we had to trust each other to be fair. And there was a history that didn't have, a huge amount of trust between NCTD and MTS and how the money would be used and how the projects would be built and what the priorities would be. And the way we got through that is trusting each other and working together, partnering and putting that regional hat on and really thinking about how to make the best decisions for the region so that we didn't have the state legislature or somebody else come in and tell us how to do it. It helped us maintain that local control for this region by working with each other and trusting each other. And so some of the things that happened with SB 1703 is we were no longer a voluntary association of agencies. So not a Joint Powers Association that was made up of a voluntary group of cities in the county working together, but now something codified in statute. We got our construction authority for MTS and NCTD projects and other projects like transit-oriented development as part of SB 1703. We got new funding allocation responsibilities. We codified the policy advisory committees. So we had executive committee and a transportation subcommittee, and we'd had a regional planning committee, but we added the borders committee. And we've also over time added the public safety committee. It gave us the authority to exercise eminent domain. It slightly modified our voting structure, and it made it so that we were no longer limited to the powers of one agency. So kind of interesting, a little bit of piece of information is when you have a joint powers authority, you have to pick one of the members as, whose rules we're going to follow. And back when the JPA was formed, if you go back and look at the old version of the JPA, the member agency whose rules we selected back at that time was the city of Escondido. So when Senate Bill 1703 passed, we no longer were bound to the rules and laws that the city of Escondido follows, but instead had our own set of rules to follow. And then we also doubled our number of employees during this time. And that was a huge effort to build partnerships with MTS and NCTD and amongst the staffs of all three agencies. And, that means that we took on those 100 employees. We didn't take, it was about 100. When I started at Sandag, there was about 85 employees. And then when we consolidated, we got up over 200. And then when we bought SR 125, the franchise, we added another group and we got around 300 employees. But that was back in 2011. And so one of the things that is really interesting to me is, even though we've added all kinds of new responsibilities over the last 10 years, we've been really conservative about adding staff. And so you'll hear more about Sandag staff during the retreat. And so, that last theme that I had talked about making great things happen when we work together, that ties into these other big wins that I wanted to discuss with you that I think will help you understand Sandag. So one of those other ones besides SB 1703 was the extension of the Transnet sales tax. That took a 2/3 supermajority in this region. It was a huge collaboration effort. Board members and staff logged hundreds of, probably thousands of hours educating the public for over a year about Sandag so that we could continue to be a self-help region that could leverage more state and federal money. And so the board members played a key role in inspiring trust with the public, and it helped us to create an expenditure plan that was based on what was best for the region as a whole. And the third big win that I wanted to discuss is SR 125. There's lots of others sprinkled in between and since then, but wow, that was one that really involved a lot of trust, a lot of collaboration, and involved board members putting on their regional hat. I can't even tell you how many days I spent working on that. I think I worked 60-hour work weeks for months working on that effort to bring that franchise out from under the private sector where it was failing to Sandag, where it wasn't anymore about profit. It was about what was best for the region. To pull that off, we had to borrow Transnet money. And the board had to bless that. It required so much collaboration and trust that we would do the right thing with that toll road for the region. So I think what I want to make sure you take away is that in order to make great things happen, we really need to work together. And so I do want you to think about, as you go through the rest of the retreat, what do you think Sandag's role should be going forward? Should we continue to be an idea factory? I think so. I think we should continue to address those area-wide needs while still meeting all of our statutory mandates. Pursuing funding, to me, is a huge deal so that we can carry out all of those programs. We're here as a partner for you, for the local agencies, to help you be successful as well and advocate for the needs across the region. SANDAG serves as an implementer for big ideas and strategic thinking for this region. And I think that we can tackle these big regional projects like big data and digital infrastructure for the region if we just keep doing what we've been doing all along. I think what I want to just sort of close with saying is I am really still thrilled to be part of SANDAG, even after 20 years. I want you all to be as happy and proud as I am about being part of this organization. There are a lot of things to look forward to in this region. Here's a few of them that got me really excited. Building this new port of entry into Mexico, also building a central mobility hub for the region. The 5 big moves, you're going to be hearing a lot of those talked about during the remainder of this retreat. So I had some questions to ask you all, but unfortunately, I think we are running out of time. I see Francesca here. And so I don't know, Francesca, a time check wise, do I have any time left or are we out of time?
Thank you, Julie. We have about 5 minutes before the next session starts. So if maybe anybody has any questions or if you'd like to throw one of those out, we do have a couple minutes. Oh, I do see a hand. Oh, it looks like, so there's a member of the public with their hand raised and we will be taking public comments, but we're going to reserve that for the end of the meeting. So that'll happen after our last session today, just before noon. But Councilmember Shu, if you'd like to ask a question, you can go ahead.
Sure, I would ask Julie, could you just say 1 or 2 sentences about AB 805, the other legislation that affected SANDAG's governance?
Yeah, I mean, I think that AB 805 is an example of some legislation that SANDAG staff, I didn't work on that one. That's not one of the 12 bills that I worked on for the agency. And I think it's an example of when you don't have consensus and collaboration going on. I think that the state is more likely to step in and tell us how to do things. And to me, what I would like to avoid is having the state, personally, I would rather we make those decisions locally and that things like our voting structure be left in the capable hands of this region and this board.
All right. Thank you so much, Julie, for that amazing presentation. Julie just went over the what we are with you, and in our next session in just about 3 minutes here, we're going to be talking about how SANDAG gets all of that really important work done. So if you're able to join us for the strategic planning session, that'll be starting at 10:15 on the same Zoom link. So feel free to stay logged in if you are going to take a break here, and we'll be right back with you in just a few short minutes.
Francesca, are we good to go?
Hi, Ray. We're just going to give it one more minute. We see some more folks popping in.
Thank you.
Before we get started, Francesca, I just want to thank you for all your help. It's Ed Musgrove.
My pleasure, Councilmember Musgrove. Thank you for being here today.
Wouldn't miss it. Thank you.
Hi, Ed.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good. I'm sorry. I knew Councilmember when he worked at the Sheriff's Department.
That's right. It's been a while, though.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your service.
I appreciate that, Doctor.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Welcome back, everyone who joined us for the first session, and welcome to those who are just joining us now. So once again, my name is Robin Wapner. I'm the Manager of Government Relations here at SANDAG. So happy to have you joining us for the member orientation, along with my co-host, Francesca Webb, Clerk of the Board of Directors. So in our first session, we heard from Julie Wiley about all of the different hats that SANDAG wears. And so your next question probably is, how do we actually do it all? It's a lot of work, I can tell you that. We're very busy here. But to help streamline our efforts and make sure that we are making the biggest impact in our region, staff has recently taken a fresh look at our strategic plan. And believe me, if anyone can do a strategic plan, it's the region's premier transportation planning agency. So now we have Ray Trainer, Jim Linthicum, Elaine Richardson, Melissa Koffelt, Dr. Cindy Burke, and Julie Wiley in our returning star role, here to tell us how we are realigning our work efforts throughout the agency to reflect the changing regional landscape and positioning the agency for success. Ray, I believe you're starting us off.
Excellent, Robin. Thank you. And good morning, everybody. It's great to see you all. And I don't know if anybody has the awareness of what momentous occasion we celebrate here on February 2nd. Anybody know what today is? That's right, Groundhog Day. It's the big day, and I don't know if you all saw the news. Phil did see his shadow, which means winter, at least in the East, is going to continue for at least another 6 weeks. But I think it's fitting that we're talking just a moment about Groundhog Day when we're talking also about our strategic planning work. And we're really, I think, hoping to give you a more acquaintance with what we've been doing and all the activities that have been underway. But one thing we want to assure you is it's not like a cinematic feature with Bill Murray and Punxsutawney Phil. We're not the same SANDAG. We're not repeating the same practices over and over again, and it's really not business as usual. But before we dig in, I want to be able to tell you just a little bit about today's session. And if you thought we were going to talk about the regional plan, I just want to try to clear that up. The regional plan is going to be discussed at your orientation on Thursday. And at that point, we're really going to take a deeper dive into the vision, the work that's been going on over the last almost 2 years, and the process that we'll be working through with all of you throughout calendar year 21, as we really try to meet the objectives that have been set before us for a faster, fairer, cleaner transportation system. And the development of that plan is really key to that. And we'll be bringing that conversation to you on Thursday. But this morning, Jim, myself, and some of the other directors are really excited to talk with you about the strategic planning process. And we're really going to cover 3 topics this morning. First, we're going to talk about why we think it's so important. Then we're going to take a look back, try to help you understand what's informed the process and the current direction and the actions that we're putting forward. And then we're going to take a look at where we're headed and what the outline of our strategic plan. And we're going to invite the directors to help us in that conversation with you. So let's start with the why. Why is strategic planning so important? And for us, we really look at the strategic planning work we do as the foundation for this organization. And as Julie indicated, we're now about 400 dedicated professionals that are serving in the region and have been really drawn to this aspect of public service. And so the strategic plan work that we've been conducting now for nearly 2 years is really focused on helping us align this array of professionals. It's helping us to align the myriad of processes that we perform. We really try to look at the resources that we have available that the public's entrusted to us. And we're also contemplating and helping to try to advance the conversations about where we're headed forward looking. And so this framework that we're developing really helps us focus the efforts. It's helping us take a look at the priorities. We're taking a look inside and we're contemplating a number of very transformational activities. And with this collective set of priorities, it helps to drive our annual goals. And this is really geared at helping us really perform our most important work the most effective way. In the strategic planning process, we've really taken a look at technology. We've taken a look at our need to be able to use more data, to be able to adapt ourselves and become more agile, and really thinking very, very seriously about the elements of equity and inclusion. And it's all this concerted effort to really respond to and meet the changing needs of our region, the people we serve, and to continue to be a valuable resource to each of you and your jurisdictions. So the idea of strategic planning isn't new. You know, for years, organizations have really worked to make sure their teams are aligned to make better informed decisions, to use unbiased data that's accurate, and the ability to make sense and create actionable change that really helps us deal with the shifting demands that are going on all around us. Now, when we take a look at all the activities that have gone on in the past couple of years, it's really focused on in the internal activities to bring clarity about our responsibilities, clarity about what it means to serve the public well. And so we really started with the most important questions, and that really talks about the why. You know, why we do what we do here at Sandag. You heard from Julie just a few minutes ago about the myriad of responsibilities we have. And what we do with the strategic plan is really think about not only the why, but we think about the how we carry out our work. And we also talk about the what. These are the roadmaps that we're going to be focusing on as we talk about the elements of change, when we talk about meeting the needs in terms of the priorities that the region has set before us, and completing the important work that really helps us to fulfill our mission. So the strategic planning process that we've been on has been a journey for both the board, the stakeholders, and our staff. Jim's going to talk about some of that in just a few minutes, but it's important to recognize that this journey that began about 2 years ago began with an organizational assessment. And this is kind of similar to like a SWOT analysis where we took a look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, risks, or threats. And we combine that with like a 360-degree evaluation. And if any of you participated in the 360, this really is a valuable way to collect confidential, anonymous feedback from the people that work around you. And so this assessment included a number of interviews. In fact, we interviewed every member of the board seated at that time. We interviewed multiple stakeholders, and we also spent a lot of time interviewing employees. Some of the topics that we focused on were culture. We took a look at our work, took a look at our relationships, not only with the board, but with our stakeholders and internally with each other. As I mentioned before, we took a deep dive into our processes, the people that are responsible to execute those processes, and we also took a look at how we were organized to meet the needs. And what this process going through these evaluations and assessments yielded was a whole issue set. It uncovered a lot of opportunities for us, and we gained a better understanding of the environment in which we're charged to operate. So as I mentioned with Julie's conversation that you just had, you recognize that we have a lot of different responsibilities that are quite varied. And this process that we went through with strategic planning really helped our team align the various mandates, the responsibilities, the operations of programs and services, along with the many projects that we deliver each year. And we tried to marry those with the expectations that have been set and the requirements of the public, the sponsoring agencies, both the federal and the state government. And at the same time, the process really helped us take a look forward to try to understand what's changing and how do we as an organization need to respond to that change to be better equipped to use data, better equipped and capable of using the most current and advanced technologies. The challenge to be more open and more direct in our communications. All of this to help enable us to really continue to operate at the forefront of change, to operate at the forefront of innovation. And this is taking place all around us when we think about transportation, about new mobility services. So the whole idea here is that we're really trying to lead. We're trying to be better equipped to help support each of you at the local jurisdiction level to be able to lead more effectively. So with that, I'd like to ask my colleague, Jim Linthicum, to take a look back and help give you some perspective as what's informed the current process and some of the actions that we're taking. So Jim?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ray. You know, going back into the late 1980s, the primary mission of SANDAG has been to implement Transnet. The first Transnet passed in 1987, and then the Transnet extension passed in 2004. So for many of our professional careers, that's what this region has been about. It's about delivering Transnet for the transportation level. And so we've always done many other regional efforts like criminal justice. Julie has mentioned that in the last session. Even beach sand replenishment. Over the years, we've had 2 jobs where we've put sand on the beaches for the coastal cities. But most of our planning and modeling and engineering and construction has been focused around delivering Transnet. And so let me go back even further. The highway network that's laid out in Transnet, or described in Transnet, was laid out in the 1950s and the 1960s. And it's built out. The transit network was laid out in the 1970s and 1980s. And with the completion of the Mid-Coast Trolley this fall, this network will also be built out. It'll be complete. The remaining projects in Transnet, they add capacity to the freeway and add service onto the transit system, but they doesn't really offer any new solutions. And finally, the board took advantage after the Transnet extension passed in 2008, right at the start of the Great Recession. The board took advantage of historically low interest rates and very competitive bids from our contractors. And they chose to accelerate the construction of so many of the Transnet projects that you see under construction now and you have for the past 10 years or so. So that's put the agency in a position. So we're pretty much now on what we call a pay-as-you-go basis, since we've maximized maximized most of our bonding capacity. Now, so this is the time we should be imagining the future, not just with a visionary regional plan and the 5 big moves, but also, as Ray's been describing, internally with our organizational structure, how we do business, how we deal with the future, not by looking in the past, but by taking advantage of all the new technologies, the new economy, big data. You hear us talk a lot about big data and how we build partnerships with both the private and public sectors to do all this. And this involves defining a new mission statement, a new vision, new strategic initiatives, and how we work with you all, the public, and our own internal staff to accomplish all this. So Ray and Melissa Kofeld, who you'll hear from in a few minutes, they are the driving forces behind this incredible strategic planning effort, one that is way more thorough than any I've ever participated in my 41 years of doing this. So let me hand this back to Ray, and he's going to share with you how we're going to accomplish all this. Ray?
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, so now that Jim took a little bit of a look back that helped you become acquainted with what's informed the work in strategic planning, I want to spend just a few minutes before we invite the directors up to take a look forward and to give you a little more insight into the framework that we've put together that brings all of the elements that we're working with together and helps us really to coalesce around focusing on the important changes that are necessary as we look forward to implementing the important work of supporting the region and fulfilling all those responsibilities and roles that we serve in. So we've really developed a comprehensive aligning a narrative, and it's expressed in this diagram that you see before you. And we talk about this being the infinity loop. And this really describes all the elements of our strategic plan, and it begins with why and it ends with why. And so when we think about the why, every component that we're going to talk about is connected to and informed by our North Star, our mission, and our vision. The how we do our work that's shown there on the left is really about the guiding principles, the values that we espouse, the actions, but it also informs the people and the process and the technology. This really defines the how we do our work, and those two intersect with the why, our North Star. On the other side of the infinity diagram is what we do. And that's expressed really in two broad categories: the initiatives that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, and the strategies. And this is what we're going to be doing over the coming year or more. And this provides the framework, as I referred to earlier, for the annual goals that are going to be undertaken as we develop the fiscal year budgets. In fact, coming before the board in just a matter of weeks will be our fiscal year 22 budget. And there we're going to provide a deeper look at this. But this morning, I just want to take a couple minutes to unpack each of these elements of the framework. And in a few moments, I'm going to invite some of our directors in so they can give you a few more details on each of these initiatives that's in that top category. So as we talk about the initiatives, these are really large, complex, and transformational efforts. As we took that introspective look that I talked about with the SWOT analysis and the 360, we recognized a lot of need for change. And these initiatives are really necessary for us to become the world-class organization that the board has envisioned for us. And when they hired us on and directed us and the vision that he's established, we talk about strategies. And these strategies represent all of the agency's activities, our responsibilities, the things that Julie talked with you about, both internal and external. Now, we've also talked about the priority projects. Last month, actually in January, I was able to come and talk to the board and give an overview of the 5 priorities. And over the course of the next several months, beginning in February and running through June, directors are going to be coming back to the board and taking a deep dive into each of these 5 priority projects. So more of this is going to be coming to give you more detail to help you become better acquainted with and understanding some of these activities that have been developed for the last few years. One of the things about this strategic model, the infinity diagram, we're still in the draft stage, and we'll be bringing this back to the executive committee in February and ultimately to the board as a part of the fiscal year 22 budget. And there we'll be talking more about the board's interaction with this strategic planning process, where the community and the stakeholders have been a part of this, and also how we address the state and federal requirements. And out of this whole process, as we talked about, is establishing a set of outcomes and outputs. And these priority projects are really reflective of the outputs that we produce as an organization. But the outcomes are things like a faster, fair, and cleaner transportation system, being a trusted source for a clearinghouse around data, like we talked about in the earlier session with criminal justice, and also the establishment of new equitable funding sources. So now what I'd like to do is invite the directors to step through each of the 5 initiatives, these transformational activities that we have underway. And we'll begin with Elaine Richardson, your Director of Diversity and Equity. Elaine?
Thank you, Ray. Good morning, members of the board and the public. Again, my name is Elaine Richardson, and I am the Director of Diversity and Equity at SANDAG. The tragic and impactful events that occurred in 2020 opened the eyes of every American and made a lasting impression on our nation and how we move forward and right the wrongs for historically underserved communities. Last week, your ad hoc equity statement subcommittee had a thoughtful discussion about equity and inclusion. The subcommittee will recommend that the board adopt the commitment to equity statement next week. At Sandag, one of the strategic initiatives is to advance equity and inclusion. We hold ourselves accountable, and we are committed to integrating these principles into everything that we do in both the workplace and the communities that we serve. We strive to look through an equity lens to help us identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of systemically marginalized groups and individuals. By making the advancement of equity and inclusion one of our core initiatives, we will lay the foundation for a framework that guides us to overcome the challenges and lead meaningful changes through the many programs, projects, and services that Sandag leads, supports, and administers throughout this region. We recently formed an Employee Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council that will bring diverse and valuable insight in acknowledging areas of improvement for equity and inclusion that will be the building blocks of the Sandag Equity Action Plan. The Equity Lens will assist us in evaluating every Sandag service, program, or project with equity and inclusion in mind. Through the regional plan, Sandag envisions a faster, fairer, and cleaner future. Social equity is one of the 3 challenges we are solving for a transportation system that is fairer. With fairness as a focus, Sandag will continue to proactively engage with communities that have historically been underserved and underrepresented to ensure that the regional plan addresses inequities and provides opportunities for upward mobility. To become a leader for our diverse communities, Sandag is committed to fostering a culture that places equity and inclusion at the forefront of everything we do. So in closing, Martin Luther King Jr. expressed this: life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? This incredible yet simple quote reminds us to ask ourselves every day and in everything we do, what are we at Sandag doing for others in our communities? By asking this question, Sandag reinforces our commitment to creating a San Diego region where every person who visits, works, and lives can thrive. Thank you. And now, next is Melissa Kofelt. She is our Director of Organization Effectiveness, and she will be discussing enhanced organization culture.
Thanks so much, Elaine, and good morning to everyone on the call today. As Elaine said, I'm Melissa Kofelt. I'm the Director of Organization Effectiveness here at Sandag. And I wanted to start out by asking all of you, can you relate to this image that's on the screen? When was the last time you had the feeling of being part of an amazing winning team? I'll admit, things are different in our virtual world. These days, we send thumbs up and smiley face emojis instead of the in-person high fives, but the feeling's the same. Part of my job at Sandag is to help our employees have that winning feeling as often as possible. Why? Because when the Sandag team is winning, it means great things are happening in the San Diego region. You've likely heard the famous quote from management guru Peter Drucker. He said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." Drucker wasn't trying to downplay the importance of strategy. He wanted to make the point that culture is critical for success. Every organization has a culture, good or bad, effective or not, it's there. The best organizations understand the need to actively manage their culture. And that's what we're doing here at Sandag, to create an environment where employees can do their best work, which in turn leads to our highest levels of performance and success. Ray mentioned in his opening remarks, the Sandag team is almost 400 employees. I can tell you they're incredibly talented, motivated, and inspired, and absolutely devoted to public service. They choose to work at Sandag because they know their work is important. They know they can make a difference for the people who live and work in your communities. A great culture coupled with a great strategy is the key to mobilizing and directing the passion and expertise of the Sandag team for the benefit of the region. So as part of developing this initiative to enhance our culture, we know a multi-pronged approach is needed. Many of the actions that we're proposing come from the organization assessment work that was completed in 2019. As part of that project, employees throughout the organization had opportunities to share their insights, provide their suggestions for improvements, and we're going to incorporate this input into our plans. There are 3 distinct areas where we're going to focus our attention. The first is to provide employees with clarity about where we're going as an organization and why. Employees also need to know what they're expected to do to ensure Sandag achieves its goals. It's all about alignment. Think back to the image of that rowing team that Ray shared earlier, with everyone pulling in the same direction. That's what we're talking about. The second area of focus is maximizing opportunities for employees to contribute. We're encouraging more cross-functional teams, giving employees the tools and the resources they need to collaborate effectively, and supporting a spirit of innovation and creativity. And then finally, the third element of our culture that we're prioritizing is investing in the Sandag team by emphasizing learning, development, and continuous improvement. We know the types of skills and expertise needed in the years ahead will be in high demand. It's imperative that we develop our employees for the types of work they'll be asked to do in the future. Last year, the Sandag team adopted a set of principles that guide how we work together. These include imagine the possibilities, partner for success, and make it happen. We repeat these steps over and over as part of our recipe for success. And I'll conclude my remarks by saying that our efforts to improve organization culture will help Sandag attract, retain, and develop a talented employee group, all committed to delivering a vibrant future for the region for all of us. So thank you. And if I could turn things over to James to talk about digital capabilities.
Well, thank you, Melissa, and good morning, everybody. As you notice, I'm wearing a hat because I want to continue Julie's theme of many hats. And before we begin, can anyone tell me what type of hat this is?
Fedora.
Yeah, yeah, fedora, but no, it's a trilby. You will have to go look that up later, but it is like a fedora, but it's a little different. But anyway, what I want to talk to you about today is improving our digital capabilities. And again, I'm James Dreisbach-Toll, and I'm the Director of Business Information and Technology Services here at Sandag. And really to just get where we need to go as an organization and do all the things that you've already heard about this morning, we need to leverage digital capabilities. We have to foster innovation and resiliency by leveraging technology. You've heard about big data and artificial intelligence, advanced analytics and visualizations. As Melissa was talking, we need to promote digital literacy, not just with our staff, but with the wider public as well. And we have adopted work from anywhere practices, and we need to build new capabilities for opening transparent solutions. So what does all this mean? What does it mean to improve digital capabilities? Well, as a technology leader, if the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us or me anything, it is the need to think differently, find solutions to keep our businesses and organizations in operation, and our reliance on technology will only continue to grow into the future. Indeed, the demand by the public for seamless access to government, information, and services that has been building over the last decade has only accelerated during this pandemic. I can clearly see that even after it's safe to reopen businesses and the public is free to come to Sandag and participate in public meetings, your constituents will demand that we continue to provide Zoom access. We have increased the amount of public participation in our public meetings, and that's only a good thing. The immediate future is, as I said, access anywhere, anytime, and at an unprecedented speed. And I'm not just talking about internet bandwidth and fast computers. I'm talking about the speed of transaction. During COVID-19, I refinanced my home loan. I used Rocket Mortgage, as many of you have heard. Not a plug for Rocket Mortgage, but everything was done online. I was approved within minutes, and the loan closed within 3 weeks. I got a couple of texts to upload some documents. Most signatures were online. Somebody did come to our house, and my wife and I had to sign 5 pieces of paper that were notarized, but besides that, it was all online. Our stakeholders, the citizens of your jurisdiction, are already demanding the same service from governments at all levels. So to improve digital capability, what I mean is to leverage the cloud for agility, resilience, and the capability to work with that big data. We need to, as Melissa was talking about, invest in our workforce with new and emerging skills. And we must safely and efficiently create open and transparent access to all Sandag's data and services. And we must promote self-service, not just for our staff, but for the public. The mantra is to make it easy. And it needs to be easy for everybody. Antoinette Meyer recently led a digital divide working group. And that is very important that in the near future, that as transportation relies more and more on technology, that we don't create an additional gap, that we have access for all. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy Burke, who's going to talk to you about data. Cindy?
Thank you, James. So what does it mean to be a data-driven organization? Sandag has always used data for our planning, our modeling, our research, and our measures of effectiveness. But what we mean now is truly taking it to the next level. We want to embed it in everything that we do. It means using new types of data, big data, to supplement the research we do. This looks like the analysis we did this fall looking at foot traffic around retail and tourism establishments to show the impact of COVID-19 on our economy. It also means looking at data in new ways, such as when we did our analysis of employment centers and where people are living and working to inform our regional plan. It means merging different types of data to look at things in new ways. This involves new partnerships. Public safety and public health, for example, are closely related to each other, and these both touch on our efforts to create walkable, sustainable, and vibrant neighborhoods. We're looking at how we can use county level data to inform what different needs in the region are and how our planning can help meet those needs. It also means making sure the quality and reliability of our data are a priority. Over the past several years, we've made data governance, program and project management, and the quality control of our data a priority. We have brought in outside experts to help us question and verify our data sources, assumptions, and analyses, and this will continue and grow. It also means sharing our data with others. For many years, Sandag has had an application called Data Surfer on our website, where one can get population numbers, estimates, and forecast. We've had mapping available online. We want to take this to the next level also with open data portals so that everyone in the region can easily access the data we're using. It also means translating our data into actionable information and using it to innovate. We want our analysis to be timely, and we want to know if what we're doing is working, and so we can pivot when we need to. We want to use the most sophisticated methods possible to make the best interpretations we can. And then we want to share this for discussion and next steps with the board and our partners so that we can partner for success. It means visualizing data in a new way. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and so is a good map, an infographic, or a data dashboard. We want to have staff with the skills and technology to help show what the data are saying, and we want to visualize to help us imagine the possibilities. It also means educating our staff and stakeholders about how to interpret data and use it. We're exploring how we can provide training internally and technical assistance to our member agencies on how to use and interpret data, so we have the skills we need in this rapidly advancing and changing world. And finally, it means leading by example and being a model for how other regions can use all these tools available to create actionable plans and to improve the delivery of services that meet the needs of every resident, regardless of gender, race, age, economic status, or any other factor that may have created disparity in the past. With data, we can make it happen. And now I'd like to turn it over to Julie Wiley, who will is our Director of Contracts and Grants.
So good morning again. For those of you who have already heard from me today, I want to talk to you about the initiative of pursuing funding sources. Because what do all these initiatives you've heard about have in common? They need money. They need a supportive board and an exceptional staff, but they need funding. And so Sandag's always been pursuing funding. I don't want to give you the impression that this hasn't always been an area that Sandag has pursued, but the responsibility has been spread across the agency and taken on by staff in addition to all their other primary roles, and on a seasonal basis rather than as sort of a dedicated function for the agency. So what might it look like to have an initiative focused on pursuing funding sources? It would mean having a team of staff dedicated to core responsibilities and goals, which are wrapped around tasks like finding new grant opportunities for the region, providing project managers with centralized information, templates, and tools that they can use to improve the success rates of Sandag in getting more competitive grants. It means putting the word out to the public and to the private sector entities that are out there that our doors are open to private partnerships and unsolicited proposals. And it means reaching out to universities and nonprofits, working with them to see if there are other cooperative arrangements we could enter or other partnerships for data that we could get involved in that will help this region. It means also seeking out new financing methods, seeing if there's different ways to obtain financing to get our projects taken care of as soon as possible. And it means carrying out all these functions with intentions and actions that ensure the fruits of our efforts are distributed equitably to the programs and projects throughout the region. Most importantly, what does it mean to have pursuit of funding as an initiative? It means that we've already shown that we can make this initiative make a real difference for the agency with the right resources. We have formed a new team at the agency already. It's been in place for less than a year, and already we have attracted $8.5 million in grant funding for work that will help close the digital divide in this region. We've received over $100 million in funding for Delmar Bluff's work using this team. And we've also had some good luck, or I don't know, I guess I don't want to call it luck. We've had the benefit of having your new board policy on unsolicited proposals attract some unsolicited proposals, as they were meant to do. And one of those is a company that submitted a proposal and we're negotiating with to see if we can make it work. But if it works, we would be having them install fiber optic communication infrastructure in the region at a tremendous savings to this region. So we want to get you interested in this initiative, in all the initiatives, and we're hoping to focus on providing funding to make more things happen in this region. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back off to Ray Traynor.
Thanks, Julie, and thanks, team. So as you've heard from our directors, these initiatives really are big, they're ambitious, they're complex, and they're really meant to be transformative. We're investing in our team, as you heard. We're investing in the way we work, the technology we use, and these are really necessary, as we talked about at the beginning, for us to become the world-class organization that the board set us on the path to become when they developed the plan of excellence and when they subsequently brought in Hasanah as our executive director. Now, the changes that our team has just outlined for you are not going to occur overnight. The development of the strategic plan, though, is really the starting point for us, and the success of our plan is really going to be measured over time. So what comes next is going to be a review, not only of these initiatives, but also the strategies that we pursue to be able to fulfill our core mission, as well as the priority projects. And as I mentioned before, we're going to be bringing these to the executive committee in mid-February as a part of their first look at the draft fiscal year 22 annual program budget. The program budget process, by the way, is something that you're going to learn more about. I believe tomorrow morning around 11:15, our team's going to take you through a conversation about the budget. But it's helpful for you to see the context at which the budget's created. And it's within the context of our strategic planning work. And as I mentioned, the strategic planning work really drives a whole set of goals. And those goals now help to drive the programs, the projects, the services, and the activities that the agency plans to carry out in the upcoming year to support the implementation of this broader strategic plan. So as we conclude the presentation portion of this session, Jim and I are hoping that you at least have an awareness of how we have been working over the last couple of years to take the important feedback from the board, from our stakeholders, and from our staff, as well as better understand the myriad of responsibilities we have, the recognition of areas where we as an organization need to grow and to adapt, the need for us to become more agile and better equipped to serve the region. And we're hoping that this at least has given you some ideas about what we've been spending our time on, as well as understanding some of the factors that have led to and contributed to the development of this comprehensive look at our organization and a good set of goals that are leading us forward into the future. So with Jim, I'd like to be able to thank our 5 directors who took their time to step you through each of these initiatives. And I would also just like to thank you for your time and attention this morning. And our hope again is that as we begin to embark on this ambitious set of efforts, as we continue to develop the core projects, the core programs, and fulfill the core mission that you've set us on the course for, it's our hope that we're going to be better positioned to be able to support you at the jurisdictions, the region at large, and to help drive the conversation forward as we begin to imagine our future. So for now, I'd like to be able to thank all of you for your time. And I'll invite Francesca or Robin to open it up if there's any questions or some comments from you.
Thank you so much, Ray, and the rest of the team for that tremendous presentation on our strategic planning efforts. We do have time for comments and questions from our board members, about 15 minutes. I know that we covered a lot, so I'm just going to ask our team, if you will oblige me, please do turn on your camera so we're ready for that discussion. And maybe just to help facilitate that, we'll do a quick popcorn round, if you'll bear with me. Ray, I think you did a great job just now wrapping up what we're hoping the board takes away from this presentation, but maybe if each of our directors can just quickly, if there's one thing that you wanted our board and the public to hear from you today, what is it? Cindy, I'm going to call on you first.
We are committed to using the best data and the best information to inform what we're doing, and we want to do that in a transparent way.
Julie.
We are committed to making sure we spend our resources in a smart way and invest in finding ways to bring more money to this region for the benefit of the agency and our partners.
Love it. Elaine, one thing.
Okay, so we are committed to leading the effort to include equity and inclusion in everything we do at Sandag.
Melissa.
Well, I need to follow the theme, we are committed. So we are committed to supporting our employees, creating a place where, an environment where employees can do their best work, because they love nothing more than to do great work on behalf of the region, behalf of our board members and the constituents that you serve.
I second that. James.
Yeah, I'm going to do it too. So Sandag and we are committed to delivering the technology to enable all that we're doing as staff, as well as access to the public, so that they can maximize their interface with Sandag.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Jim, Ray, any last takeaways you want to make sure we highlight?
You know, I just want to reinforce that I've worked here a long time. I've been doing this my whole career, delivering transportation projects. You have in Sandag, you have the most passionate and committed staff I've ever worked with. Please use us to get you where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
If I may, Robin,
Yes, please.
I know for board members, we're throwing a lot at you. And I want to apologize for you for doing that. But at the same time, we really want to engage you. We can do it one-on-one today in this format. But I want you to absolutely feel comfortable asking questions, because as a professional, we still don't know a lot of the things that we do and we learn every day. So sorry about you. We're probably overwhelming you as council members. Probably will tell you, being on the board of directors, being a leader like you are, being able to make sound policy decision require you to know the business at hand that we do. So don't think that this is the last time you're gonna hear from us, or we're gonna talk about these things. But I do want you to remember that the strategic planning process actually started a couple of years ago, and we were planning to represent the product to the board last March, and then the pandemic hit, and then we couldn't do anything. But the strategic planning process is really important. This is what will guide our agency into the future. This is where we're going to be asking you for resources. This really kind of define who we are, why and what and how we're going to do it. It also it's important for you as leaders, because remember, you make all policy decisions, we implement them. As leaders, to get really involved and ask questions. So I know it's too much throwing at you, but be patient. We'll talk more. We're ready to talk one-on-one. It's a complicated world we live in. So thank you for your patience. I know you're sitting there and thinking, oh my gosh, that's too much to observe. You're not supposed to observe it in one meeting.
Thank you, Hassan. Councilmember Shu, I saw your camera come on. Would you like to say something?
No, not at this time. I actually don't want to take up too. I'm worried that Chair Blakespeare is going to give me an hourglass, a 3-minute hourglass any day now. So I'm going to be as quiet as I can.
You get unlimited time now.
2.5 minutes, council member.
I'm curious to hear from some of our board members. I'm sure some of your jurisdictions have gone through a strategic planning effort. Any takeaways from that, lessons learned that you'd like to share with SANDAG as we continue in our process?
I'll do one last questions.
Okay, well, thank you again for the team. We are going to take a quick break now, and we will reconvene the meeting at 11:15 for your introduction to your policy advisory committees. You can stay logged on. We'll be right back. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
The best way to burn fat is with more fat. And I'm being serious because there's actually two different types of fat in your body. One is white fat, and that's probably hanging out on your belly right now. It's extremely hard to get rid of. And then there's a lesser known type of fat called brown fat. And this is the type of fat that literally eats up your stubborn, annoying white fat.
Good morning, everyone. I think we're just about ready to get started with our next session of the meeting. I am Francesca Webb. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm the clerk of the board here at SANDAG. And thank you to those of you who have been with us all morning. For this session, we're going to be talking about the policy advisory committees. And for those of you who are here this morning, I mentioned my background in the communications department and how there was a lot of lingo to learn. And you may hear the term PAC thrown around quite a bit, which does stand for Policy Advisory Committee. So that's one of those things that I had to learn very quickly. Giving our presentation today are going to be the committee liaisons for each policy advisory committee. And I know we've talked a lot about hats this morning. It's a shame that Mayor Voss isn't with us to represent, but I did want to mention there's a couple of different hats that our policy advisory committee liaisons wear. I think it's best to think of these folks, and myself included, as your buddies around the agency, kind of like the buddy system in elementary school. We never want you to feel like you're on your own in terms of trying to navigate the process here in terms of meetings and also the information that you have to learn. So they're here really to help you coordinate and to navigate, and they're here to educate you as well on some of the more technical issues. I know a lot of members have mentioned how valuable staff briefings are in terms of making sure that they have all the information that they need and also that they understand the information, because there really is quite a lot that goes into the reports and the information that we give you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first committee liaison. Mary is going to talk to you a little bit about the audit committee. So I'll hand it over to Mary.
Thank you, Francesca. Good morning, board members, both new and continuing. I would like to introduce myself. I am Mary Koshmashrab, your independent board appointed performance auditor. I was appointed in April of 2019, and I just got reappointed for another 2 years this past December. I look forward to working with you all as the board's auditor and working jointly and cooperatively with other auditors, including the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee auditors, as well as the external financial and compliance auditors. During the month of February, OPA will be reaching out to each board member to set up an annual risk discussion, kind of looking at risk from your perspective as a board member, and then also sharing with you OPA's audit plan for the upcoming year. Today, I'm here to share some information regarding SANDAG's audit committee and OPA, which was a result of the passing in 2017 of Assembly Bill 805. I hope you will join us tomorrow in the breakout session, where I will share a bit more about the office as well as the audit committee and be able to answer board member questions in more detail. Finally, I'll provide you with contact information that will allow you to reach out anytime to me individually or for future. Next slide, please. I think we are a little bit behind on our slides. Let's keep going. One more, up, back. One more back. There we go. Board Policy 39 consists of the policies and procedures of how AB 805 is carried out within SANDAG. We'll discuss AB 805 and Board Policy 39 in further detail tomorrow. But just so you know, the information is also available with other board policies on SANDAG's website. Next slide, please. The role of the audit committee is to assist the board in fulfilling its oversight responsibilities and providing a forum for pursuing the opportunities for improvements in operations, financial reporting, and internal controls identified through the agency's audit products. Next slide, please. The audit committee membership consists of 2 board appointed members, and that is currently pending appointment or reappointment, and 3 public members. All members of the audit committee are appointed by the board of directors, and the chair will appoint and select who is the chair of the audit committee, as well as the vice chair. They serve for 2-year periods. All members must also meet qualification requirements, which includes just a basic understanding of finances of SANDAG, an understanding of SANDAG as a whole, and understanding of the audit process. Next slide, please. The Office of the Independent Performance Auditor, known as OPA, has myself as the appointed independent performance auditor, and I'm on a 2-year term that is renewable. I have 2 auditors, Lloyd Carter and Michelle Ledwick, and I have 2 interns. Currently, there is a vacant position for 1. All auditors must also meet minimum qualifications according to SANDAG's position specification and professional auditing standards in accordance with AB 805. Next slide, please. Our committee liaison is Lloyd Carter. He's the principal management internal auditor. His phone and contact information is shown here. Please feel free to always reach out to Lloyd or myself. Again, I am appointed by the board and here to work directly with board members. Thank you, and I'll hand it over to Hector, who will share next his committee. Thank you.
Gracias, Mary.
You're welcome.
Y yo les voy a hablar un poco del Comité de Fronteras. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Borders Committee. And to start, I want to ask you to think on where San Diego is and our location. And unfortunately, I think you will agree with me that for many, we live in a cul-de-sac, but nothing is more wrong than that. We don't live in an alley with no exits, but instead we live in the biggest gateway of our country. It is not well known that 1 of every 10 people coming into the United States through any airport, any seaport, any land port of entry along the border with Canada or with Mexico, do so through San Isidro, the busiest international land port of entry in the world. Think on this, 1 of every 10. This is larger than any other international entrance to the United States. And think big. Think on other international hubs such as New York, Chicago, Atlanta, and you are there. Let's switch. Now think on California. This is the 5th largest economy in the world, and Mexico is its largest international export market. We export to Mexico 70% more than our second market, that is Canada. And altogether, we formed the North America Free Trade Agreement. Now, Otay Mesa Port of Entry is the main gateway for those exports. And I'm talking about billions of dollars of the size of the economies of some of the states in the Union. And this is export to Mexico through our Port of Entry. Your region, ladies and gentlemen, is the gateway of California's global competitive. But it is not only people and goods crossing the border. It's the economy, it's the environment, transportation infrastructure, water and energy supply, and of course, many challenges too. If we can move to the next slide, please. This is why we work with all of our neighbors using 3 optics. An international perspective when addressing topics with Mexico, an interregional perspective when working with our neighboring counties, Orange, Riverside, and Imperial County. And we also have a government-to-government relationship with the native tribes. Can you move to the next slide, please? As the other policy committees in SANDAG, the Borders Committee is formed by representatives from the 6 sub-regions, the cities in North County Coastal, the cities in North County Inland, South County, East County, the city of San Diego, and the county of San Diego. But we also have the participation of all of our neighbors, Imperial County, Riverside, and Orange. Of course, Mexico, represented by the Consul General of Mexico in San Diego, and the native tribes. We have a very strong relationship with the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association. Many people doesn't know that San Diego is the county with more tribes in the whole country. But also I want to acknowledge that we also partner with Caltrans, the County Water Authority, and SCAG, the Council of Government and Metropolitan Planning Organizations north of us. Your Borders Committee received inputs from two working groups, the Technical Tribal Working Group and the Committee on Binational Regional Opportunities. We held summits, seminars, workshops, and tours when it was possible, partnering always with our neighbors. The Borders Committee meets on the fourth Friday of every month after the board meetings. Y sí, SANDAG es una organización de clase mundial, como ya lo han escuchado varias veces. Working with our partners and our neighbors is crucial. And I'm gonna be your partner on this endeavor. Now, with this, I conclude, and I will pass it off to Robin Wapner, who is going to talk about the Executive Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Hector. Hi, everyone. Once again, my name is Robin Wapner, and I serve as the committee liaison for both the board of directors and the executive committee. We want to thank you for being here today. And I do want to encourage you, if you have any questions as we're going through the presentation, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. We want this to be as interactive and engaging as possible. So what is the executive committee, also known as EC? First of all, I will tell you this, we are the policy advisory committee that meets the earliest at SANDAG. I say that only as a word of caution because those 8 o'clock meetings can be really rough. But seriously though, this is a policy advisory committee where you get a little bit of everything. I like to think of it as our leadership advisory group because it consists of the same sub-regional representation that all of our policy advisory committees have. However, 2 of those seats are automatically filled by the chair and the vice chair of the SANDAG Board of Directors. So for example, what that means is that this year, Chair Blake Spear and Vice Chair Todd Gloria will also serve as the chair and the vice chair of the executive committee. And then, in addition to the sub-regional representation, the chairs of our other policy advisory committees, which you're hearing about today, also serve as ex officio members. What ex officio means is really just they are non-voting advisory members of the executive committee. So in that sense, this committee really serves as a forum for our board leadership, and as such, is a place where the roadmap is set for where our agency is going. We can go to the next slide, please. It does this by setting the board's agendas, which may sound boring, but I'm telling you, this is where you actually get to see the action before it gets to you. While any member can always request an agenda item from the chair, the executive committee is where it's actually set. The executive committee also serves as the legislative lead for SANDAG, which, as a member of the SANDAG government relations team, makes me think that this is a very important committee. For those interested, in fact, I'll tell you that we will be bringing our 2021 legislative program to the executive committee next week. And one of the other fundamental responsibilities that the executive committee has is reviewing the annual SANDAG budget before it goes to the board of directors every year. You're going to hear more about the budget process and its timeline at tomorrow's budgets and programming session, just a little bit of a teaser. But what is important to recognize is that, again, the first bite at this very important apple happens at the executive committee. So in closing, I would say if you're looking to get a sense of what's to come or where the agency is headed, the executive committee is a good one to keep an eye on. In fact, becoming the committee liaison for the executive committee was probably the best crash course in learning everything I know about SANDAG. It sets the course and serves as the forum for SANDAG leadership to set the strategic direction for the agency. I'm looking forward to working with those of you that will serve on the executive committee, and now I'll hand it over to Cindy Burke for the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Robin. Hi, everybody. I want to say the Public Safety Committee may be the newest committee at SANDAG, and it was formed in 2003 when we went through 1703, as Julie discussed in the history of SANDAG this morning. And not only did MTS staff and other transportation-related people come over to SANDAG, but we also had ARGIS come into SANDAG. And ARGIS is a joint powers agreement that has a lot of the data in the region. It's the library, the storing house for data from our member agencies. And they're very technology focused. And they had an executive committee that helped to govern their policies and procedures. And that met at SANDAG. And it just seemed like a good fit to have ARGIS come in, given our regional focus. SANDAG is a a quality of life agency, and public safety is obviously a quality of life issue, and it's so closely tied to other issues such as public health, as well as sustainability in our communities. And now obviously with what's been going on more recently, obviously with diversity and equity as well. If you could go to the next slide. So the Public Safety Committee is a little bit different than the other committees. We have 6 regional elected officials from around the region, but then we also have 14 other public safety entities that are represented. Some are voting, some are advisory. So it really makes for an interesting discussion. My roots are in criminal justice and public safety in the San Diego region, and there really is no other body in the region that brings together electeds and actual heads of public safety agencies. The heads of those agencies, the directors or the chiefs, the sheriff, are the ones who are invited to attend those meetings. And we do get a lot of good turnout, especially, quite honestly, we don't have as many action items as the other committees do, but it really offers a unique forum to be able to share information that's really timely and sensitive. Those other members who vote, the 6 are the district attorney, the sheriff. We have 2 representatives from police departments around the region, fire, EMS, as well as the San Diego Police Department. For the advisory members, we have probation, the tribes, and CHP that have a seat at the table. And then we also have some entities that alternate seats on an annual basis. That includes the Drug Enforcement Administration, the U.S. Marshals, the FBI, TSA, ICE, the attorney, the U.S. Attorney. And then we also have NCTD and MTS that share a seat, Homeland Security and the Office of Emergency Services, and then the military, the Navy, and the Marine Corps share a seat. If you could go to the next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we don't have as many action items as some of the other committees. We do go when we have new budget items and share those. We do get Public Safety Committee's approval on all of our work efforts, and that does come up from the Chief Sheriff's Group. We have a Board Policy 26, which does inform our membership, and that has evolved over time, which could, if anybody who's going to be sitting on PSC is interested in that, I'm happy to describe how we got to the membership that we did. But again, we do come with ARGIS projects. There are policy-related issues related to data sharing, sensitivity of information. Most recently, we've had different things with license plate readers. So definitely we want people who are engaged on the committee, and we appreciate all the support and the dialogue we get there. We share our products related to public safety. Obviously, some crimes don't just stay in one jurisdiction, so we really want to bring timely information to inform our elected officials. And then we also have our partners sharing information to encourage the dialogue that's going on. So if you are going to be sitting on PSC, I'm happy to answer any other questions, and we're excited to have your contributions and your input as we move forward, especially at this time right now where we're really looking at public safety reform and a lot of different efforts. And I think the next person is going to be, there's my contact information, is Tueri, who'll be sharing information about the Regional Planning Committee.
Thanks, Cindy. So good morning, everyone. I'm Tueri Faola, and I'm your Regional Planning Committee liaison. And I'm really pleased to be here with you to talk about Regional Planning Committee because their work truly impacts San Diego residents for where we live, how we get around, preserving our beautiful natural environments that so many of us enjoy, and so much more. Next slide. So the Regional Planning Committee provides guidance directly to our Board of Directors. There are 6 working groups that report to the committee, and together they cover the important planning aspects of our region, which includes our environment, military, energy, social equity, our shorelines, and general region planning, where our planning directors come together each month. And these groups, along with our Regional Planning Committee, help to shape and inform the development and the implementation of the regional plan. Next slide. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the regional plan, as it's a primary aspect of the Regional Planning Committee, it's essentially the blueprint for how we create a sustainable future. And what I mean when I say a sustainable future, it's ensuring that we have clean air for our region, providing better access to jobs, healthcare, higher education, and especially looking at our most vulnerable communities, those who are people of low income or people of color. And it's also about reducing traffic congestion and giving people transportation choices, as well as there are other community resources and needs that go into the regional plan. And I don't want to forget that we also have to meet all of our state and federal regulatory requirements with the regional plan. So our Regional Planning Committee, it meets once a month, generally held on the first Friday of the month at 12:30 p.m. Next slide. And this is my contact information. As others have said, we're certainly here to be a resource to you. And I'm happy to talk more about Regional Planning Committee and the role that it plays within the agency. And with that, I'll turn it over to Phil Traum to talk about Transportation Committee.
Great, thank you, Tueri, and good morning, everyone. My name is Phil Traum, and I serve as your Transportation Committee liaison. So as Francesca said, think of me as your transportation buddy. I want to make sure that you have the best experience possible and that you and your staffs are well informed. So on this committee, you'll get to know the people, the plans, the projects, and the programs that shape transportation in our region. Next slide. Well, the Transportation Committee definitely doesn't go it alone. It's supported by 10 working groups, 8 standing and 2 temporary, that focus on specific aspects of the transportation system or on specific projects. These groups are made up of your public works directors, your traffic engineers, but also active transportation planners, transit managers, and specialized transportation advocates, just to name a few. Next slide. Well, what does the Transportation Committee do actually? Well, fundamentally, it advises the SANDAG Board of Directors on transportation planning, policy, and project matters. Well, that's a mouthful, but since transportation is at the core of what SANDAG does, the Transportation Committee is involved with big projects like the regional plan, corridor planning, project programming even, and project development and delivery. Lots and lots of exciting stuff. As your liaison, you will come to find that I am extraordinarily passionate about transportation and about transportation planning. And I'm looking forward to sharing that passion with you. The next slide. So here's my contact information. Please reach out anytime, seriously anytime, with any questions, big or small. I'm here to support you and to make your time on the Transportation Committee a success. And now I'll hand it back to our clerk or your clerk, Francesca. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you to everybody who presented. I just really want to make sure that everybody knows that we are really here to make sure that you have everything you need, and you don't have to remember all of these folks' names and contact information. If you need anything at all, that is what I'm here for. I'm happy to connect you with the right person on the staff to get your questions answered, set up meetings and briefings for you if that's what you are looking for. So really just if you can remember my name, that's really the one takeaway that you need today, and I'll make sure to get you the right stuff. And just also thank you for everyone for attending this morning. We know that you're here because you want to serve your constituents and make sure that you're informed and able to participate in all these important discussions and make the right decisions for the region. And that's really what unites us all here, is making sure that we're doing the right thing for the region. So thank you for being here. And with that, I'll open it up to questions. If anybody has a question about one of the committees or anything else that you've heard today, please use your Zoom button to raise your hand and we'll make sure that we get your questions answered. None.
Francesca, I have a question. I'm curious to know if any members in this session are some of our PAC members. We've anxiously been awaiting for the subregions to complete your appointments this last month. We want to know who our buddies are this year. Can you raise your hands if you're going to be on any of our PACs?
See, we've got Mayor Huebner here, Councilmember Shu, Councilmember Edson. Would any of you like to say a few words about being on a committee? If you've had a few go-rounds already, I know a couple of you are brand new.
Sure, this is Mayor Huebner, Lisa Huebner. I've been on regional planning, actually was the chair of regional planning for a couple of years when I was on the board previously. I think a lot of important work is done at the committee level. It's where we really roll up our sleeves and work hard looking into issues in great detail. I also have appreciated that, oh, you'd like me to start my video. Okay. I've also appreciated staff working with us so hard on these committees. We also get additional presentations that the board doesn't. Most items from committees go to the board, but some of the presentations that we get are unique to our committees. I will say I was a little surprised to hear that executive is starting at 8 a.m. Not being a morning person, I am not happy to hear about that. Let me be the first to suggest that we move that to after the board of directors meeting instead of before the board of directors meeting. Thank you.
We'll make sure that's part of the meeting record.
Thank you.
Councilmember Shu, what PAC will you be on this year?
I'll be a alternate on, I think, 3 PACs. Which leads to my question is, can you clarify, Francesca, or any of the PAC leads, what is the relationship between the actual primary and alternate on each of the PACs? How do alternates work on the PACs?
I don't know if there's a standard SANDAG response, but I can answer for Public Safety Committee. We do welcome anybody who would like to attend at any time. For the jurisdictions, if the primary is in attendance, we get RSVPs ahead of time. And so if the primary is there, the primary would be the voting individual. If there's a vote to be taken, if the primary is not there, then the alternate would be the one voting, but we welcome input from anybody who would like to attend at any time, especially as we're virtual and it's an easier thing to do. So I'm not sure if that's a standard SANDAG response, but that's been my experience at Public Safety.
I see John Kirk with us. John, could you expand on that a little bit for us?
Absolutely. With the PACs, the alternates are absolutely encouraged to attend the Policy Advisory Committee meetings. And I think part of where that is reflected is in the SANDAG bylaws, there's a provision for stipends that are given to board members and Policy Advisory Committee members. But unlike the board, alternates receive that stipend when they attend even as an alternate. And that just underscores the encouragement to stay involved in that way, even if you're not able to vote as a member of the Policy Advisory Committee meeting, you still have that same voice. You can still participate and help to drive the discussion as part of that meeting.
Thanks so much. Councilmember Edson, did you want to say a few words or ask a question?
Sure. No, I just wanted to mention that I have served on for 4 years on policy advisory committees, and I will continue to serve this coming year. I served on public safety my first year as alternate, and it was very interesting. And also at the same time, since I was new on SANDAG, I had an opportunity to take a borders tour with Hector, which was amazing. Learned so much about a part of the region being in North County that I'm not terribly familiar with. I have served for 3 years on transportation, the last 3 years, the first as an alternate and the next 2 as primary. You get a great deal of value being on public advisory committees, and it's, as was mentioned, an opportunity to have your voice heard whether you vote or not. So it's really important. I look forward to continuing to serve on transportation in this coming year for representing North County Transit District. So thank you. And also have had a great relationship with staff along the way. So I met with my first 2 TC staff liaisons early on. Phil and I haven't met personally, but that we are in COVID times. But they were really helpful. And so I think it's just really important that people reach out to staff and stay involved.
Thanks so much. And Joanna, would you mind telling us a little bit about your role as an advisory committee member?
Sure. So I'm Joanna Scavone, the new chair of the board of the Airport Authority. And the Airport Authority and the port both have seats on the Transportation Committee as voting members. And so I had served in that role for the last 2 years as the primary member, and then we have an alternate. We're finalizing our appointments at our board meeting on Thursday, and after that we will have 2 new members of the of the Transportation Committee representing the airport, and I will join the SANDAG board as an advisory member or ex officio member. And that we also have an alternate who is Paul Robinson, who has served in that capacity before. And so I've really gotten a lot out of the Transportation Committee to that point. Serving in the last 2 years as you've undertaken a lot of big projects and as the airport has remained in dialogue with you and a partner with you. I also got to take a Mid-Coast trolley tour. So as Joel was saying, it's really informative to get to participate at that level and work with staff and see the presentations. And the airport is delighted to be part of that. And I hope that some of my new colleagues are also dialed in and getting some of this orientation, and you will see us around. So I look forward to continuing the orientation and participating on the board. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Joanna, and everybody who provided their comments. We do have a little bit of housekeeping to take care of. We need to make sure that we're allowing the public to participate. So if anybody that is in the public attendees would like to raise their hand to ask a question of any of the presenters or the members that are here, we'll call on you. So just give people a moment. All right. Last call. All right, well, seeing none, I think we'll go ahead and close out the session today. Thank you again, everybody. Oh, sorry.
We do need to take non-agenda public comment as well, please.
Oh, falling down on the clerk job. Thank you, Robin. If there are any non-agenda public comments, if you could go ahead and raise your hand and we'll make sure you get an opportunity. All right, I'm not seeing any hands up. All right, well, I think then with that, we'll go ahead and close out the meeting today. Thanks again for attending, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with the first session being priorities and milestones with our senior leadership team and also Chair Catherine Blakespear. So it'll be a good opportunity to get to know them a little better and hear about the priorities for the group. So if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call and I'd be happy to follow up on any of the information. We did record everything today, so we'll be sending that out to you next week as well. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.